mission?
Well, I think a lot, and I really thank him for doing all of that. And, I would have to say it's hard for me to let some of that go. Everything's not going to be done maybe the way that you would do it. And yet I know my son is in great hands. He's just a super, super dad. I think it's hard for any parent to be a parent alone. I know that because my husband and I both commute, we have a commuting marriage, we're both single parents in a certain way. And so I think it's really hard for him just because there's nobody else to help, really.
On a somber note, oh, okay, hang on one sec. Okay. Your commander there in space is the brother-in-law to Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords. What has it been like at the International Space Station since the Tucson shootings?
It's hard to be far away when things are happening down on Earth, and I can't speak for Scott, but I think something like the tragedy in Tucson, at least for me, it makes me think how precious all my relationships are, and it just made me want to call everybody that I love and just make sure that they knew that I cared about them. And up here, I think that we have a serious job to do, and we're intent on doing our jobs, and we try not to let things get in the way. And at the same time, there's a value in just thinking about what's going on and trying to come to terms with it.
Yeah, I'm curious. Does it get lonely in space?
Well, I was very excited about this interview just because I won't necessarily say it's lonely up here, but there are not a lot of other women. And so actually the thought of sort of having coffee with you guys was really appealing to me. In fact, I brought mine. I'm serious. There's something nice about girlfriends.
I love that.
There's something nice about sitting around with your girlfriends and saying hello.
Yeah, I love that. I'm curious how you also prepared to leave for 6 months. That's such a long trip.
Well, I did my best. I know I've left a lot of holes. I'm still writing back and forth with my husband and making sure he understands how to get my W-2 and all those kinds of, administrative things. My son had known for a couple years that I'd be going to the space station, and I tried to make it really clear when it would happen. It took several years to train. I traveled to Japan, to Europe, to Russia, and around the U.S., training for really almost 3 years to get ready for the mission, and that's actually worse in a way than being up here. They like to say that when I'm up here, at least they know where I am. And in fact, they have an application, where a computer program that they look at, and they know exactly where I am. And they go, "Mom, you're going over Australia." So it's pretty fun to be up here now where they know where I am.
Wow. What research are you doing in space that you're most excited about?
On a day-to-day basis, I love to do the things that I actually get to touch and move, like the experiment that you saw with the bubbles just now. But some of them aren't as tangible. We're doing some research in osteoporosis, which I think is fascinating and valuable. Basically, I'm an experiment, and because we lose bone mass up here, because we don't walk around on our legs, we lose bone at about 10 times the rate of a 70-year-old osteoporotic woman. And so because I don't have some of the potential complications that somebody who's 70 might, I'm sort of a clean medical specimen to do some experiments. And so I'm taking some of those drugs, and we're looking at how my bone mass is changing. And we looked at it before I left, while I'm up here, and also when I get home. And it'll help us understand a lot about how osteoporosis, the mechanism of osteoporosis, which certainly affects millions of people down on the earth.
Do the health implications of that scare you?
I won't say they scare me, but I'll tell you that I take them very, very seriously in that we exercise, about almost 2 hours a day, which I'll say I'm not disciplined enough to do down on the earth. But I do it up here because the implications of not exercising are really having a tremendous amount of bone loss. And I have a 10-year-old, and I figure I still have a lot of running around to do when I get home.
Katie, I wanted to ask you, other than your family, your son, as a woman, what do you miss the most?
I'm actually so excited about being here and just living in this environment and discovering new things every day in terms of what's delightful about just being here, about moving back and forth. It's just really such a neat place. I don't actually miss anything yet. I certainly miss my family quite a bit, but at the same time, it's not as if I wish to be there. I'm really happy to be here.
Katie, you mentioned that you exercise 2 hours a day, but being that you have no gravity, how do you exercise in space?
It's a great question, and we have a weightlifting machine which works on a principle of vacuum. Like I'm not really lifting weights, but I'm pulling against something that's pulling on a vacuum, and so it's really hard. Like, when you're trying to get a lid off a jar that's got vacuum on it, it's harder than if there was no vacuum, or when you're pulling against something. So that we do